I want that his head on the hood of my pickup!
The Holler Kings, where the horror's southern fried.
It's me, Craig.
It's me, Adam.
And we're the Holler Kings.
Absolutely. The Holler Kings.
All right, we have a guest.
Yes.
Our first guest, Mr. Forrest Sanders.
I'm the first guest?
Absolutely.
Well,
Nice.
just for the listeners, if you're not familiar with Forrest, you might have already noticed he has a much better voice than we do.
It's not.
He is a video journalist, broadcaster, multiple award-winning. That's about as good as it's going to get for an intro.
Yeah, thanks, man.
How do you like
I'll
it?
take all of that.
But we are here today to talk about what?
We are here to talk about King Kong Lives.
America's biggest hero is back, and he is not happy. King Kong lives.
It's true. It's true. King Kong Lives, 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Straight out, I got to ask you guys your experience with King Kong.
Oh, wow, we're going all the way back to, like, just King Kong in general.
Well, just for a, kind of massage it in.
Okay.
How were you introduced to King Kong, and what are your feelings about Kong?
I was already a Godzilla kid. I'll take it a step back. So my first kaiju film. So my dad brings home, when I'm 3 years old, a copy of Yog, Monster from Space.
Yog, monster from space. An irresistible, terrorizing monster.
We have merged ourselves into the giant crab and the jungle turtle.
Monsters never before seen, fighting for control of planet Earth against the unconquerable.
Do you know this one?
No.
Okay.
No.
It would have come out, I think it was 1970. It was like this island with monsters, and this giant squid type thing comes and attacks. So anyway, I was hooked on that. And then the next one that I got was Godzilla vs. Megalon. So I feel like there's a little bit of a connection to Kong there, because the 1976 Kong had him on the World Trade Center famously in the poster art, and Godzilla vs. Megalon, I feel like perhaps ripped that off with
Absolutely.
their poster art, because it's got Godzilla and Megalon fighting on top of the World Trade Center, which is a scene that is not in the movie.
Didn't matter.
That's getting off track. Point being, like, I was already into giant monsters attacking cities with Godzilla, and I had several of those films when I saw the 1930s original, which I guess I would have been 3 or 4 when I caught that on TV, and loved the film. I knew that I was seeing, like, even though I'm a little kid, I knew that I was seeing, like, this is a cinematic experience right here. And that would have been the only one I would have seen for a while. I guess, like, it was probably about 10 or 11 when I saw this one. And it was around the same time that I'd seen the 1976 film that this is a sequel to.
Sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Adam?
Really, I don't have a lot of experience with kaiju films in general. I haven't watched a lot of them, but I'd say my first experience with Kong was catching King Kong versus Godzilla on, like, TV one Saturday morning.
King Kong, the unconquerable. Godzilla, the indestructible. King Kong versus Godzilla.
Even that, like I said, even not being into him, that kind of hooked me.
Yeah.
And I ended up sitting down watching the whole thing. That was my first one for a while. I didn't really watch any of the other ones till later in life.
Yeah, as a kid, I loved what Toho did with King Kong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like making him much bigger and making him tougher, and also, without getting into spoilers and whatnot, they didn't treat him like a tragic character, which I feel like the Hollywood version always treats Kong horribly.
Yes.
He always gets horribly, it's sadness porn.
Yeah.
Just how much he goes through and how much damage he takes, and captivity and that sort of thing. So I like that the Toho movies, there's another one, King Kong Escapes, that's pretty infamous, where he fights a mechanical version of himself.
Oh,
What do they
nice.
call the mechanical one? Is it like Mechanicong or
It's
something like that?
It's like Nigh Kong.
Yeah.
It has an odd.
And this predates Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla.
Oh, really?
So I think that there was some inspiration that that happened there from what King Kong Escapes did.
Well, and that's what the original Godzilla is in many ways a play off of Kong, because the Japanese translation, Godzilla or Gohira, it's a combination of whale and gorilla. So there's kind of already that DNA.
Right.
You know, he is the prototype for all the kaiju. You know, even though a lot of people want to sidestep it, sometimes it feels like. But I mean, it
Seems
all
like
goes
the
back
main
to him.
focus always is Godzilla and the whole kaiju thing.
Definitely.
But
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's 76 Kong is definitely my introduction to the character.
Now, at a theater near you, you can see the most exciting, original motion picture event of all time. King Kong. Rated PG.
I saw it on television when they played a longer version. There were scenes included on the TV version that aren't theatrical or in the modern Blu-ray release and stuff like that. Some extra, you know, they used to do that back in the day for some reason.
Yeah.
Halloween 2 has a really famous cut that has a lot more footage. From there, I think I saw everything. I was obsessed. I mean, you know.
Are you still a fan of the 1976 film? Because I like it overall.
Yeah, I do too, and I appreciate what they were trying to do with it. I love Charles Grodin in it.
Yes.
it's hysterical just to see him in that movie. You know, just in general.
It had a great cast.
Yeah.
It had a great cast, and I think one of the other things that I've always felt about it is that out of the three times that we've seen that particular story, I found the 1976's ending to be the most tragic of the three. It is a sad bummer of an ending. And I think part of that has to do with the Jessica Lange performance, the way that she plays it. It's really heart-wrenching stuff, and it's bleak in a way that seemingly only 1970s films could really do.
Right.
I have some thoughts that we'll get into in a moment about them recapping that sequence at the beginning of King Kong Lives. But I think at least within the context of the 1976 film, it's a really powerful ending. I think that film does several things really well, and that's one of them.
Well, the rapport between Kong and her is pretty great too.
Yes.
They have a whole thing where she actually talks to Kong, which the original, you know, I love Fay Wray, but she just screams the whole time, and rightfully so. I think that's a very natural response. But I like that, you know, the 70s version, there's communication between the two characters. She goes so far as to punch him at one point in the face. It's amazing.
That was pretty, because I just watched it, the 76 version, just last week before I watched King Kong Lives, just because I want to kind of see if there was any connection there. And that was pretty hilarious when she's like punching him in the face and he's just kind of jerking, like, stop, what are you doing?
I think that film influences the Peter Jackson film more than I think sometimes we acknowledge, because we know, like, it was supposed to be a love letter to the 1930s original what Peter Jackson did, but there is a lot of influence in that film, I feel, from the 1976 film. The way that Naomi Watts plays the character seems to be very similar to the way Jessica Lange did things, and just the tragic nature of the ending. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Peter Jackson film does hit me right in the feels, but I just feel like the 76 one is even more bleak about the ending.
I feel like as a monster kid, the only big stumble that the 70s version has is Kong doesn't really fight very many. He has one scene against a giant snake that's pretty infamous, but otherwise, I mean, he never goes up against any dinosaurs, or because it's kind of grounded. I mean, they almost want to be pseudo-realistic, and I feel like that's a pretty big misstep in retrospect. Like you need to see him defending her from other monsters.
I wish that element was in there too. Did you hear this complaint a lot in 2000? Was it 2005 that the Peter Jackson film came out? Okay. I heard this complaint over and over again. It's like, why did they add dinosaurs? It was like, but like the dinosaurs were there in the 1930s film, and also in that one's sequel, Son of Kong. So people's familiarity was more with the 1976 film than I think that a lot of folks were letting on. It's like that's the version of the story that a lot of people seem to know so well who were making that complaint of, why are dinosaurs in this?
Well, that's what the 33 Kong is, definitely a Lost World scenario. That's the whole idea, right? Is it's a island of monsters. Kong isn't the only one. He's just maybe the most unique and human-like. I mean, they give him so much personality in the animation. I'm not sure any of that was really in the script. You know, I think the Willis O'Brien animating it and everything made Kong a lot more charismatic and lovable. So far, when they get the son of Kong, I mean, he makes him just like, I mean, it's almost like a slapstick character. Like, he's so animated and fun and cute almost, you know, that it doesn't work for some people. But I kind of dug it when I was a kid, to be honest.
I kind of like it as well, which is an interesting thing to see. Like, these are the two films that tried to do a sequel to the classic story. So it's kind of an interesting contrast between what they did with Son of Kong versus the way that they approach it with King Kong Lives.
Yeah. Well, also, just real quick, the whole talking about DNA and everything. I'm pretty sure Son of Kong is the first sequel that does the whole "son of" motif or whatever.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure, and it came on the heel. They released it barely a year later. I mean, they just like, as soon as King Kong's caught on, they were like, start. You know, I think they even reused some animation or stuff that was not used properly. They, you know, shoved it all in. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it, you know, from there we have, you know, Son of Frankenstein, etc.
That was the one I was thinking of, but I couldn't remember what year that was.
39, so
really?
several years later, yeah. I would like a synopsis read.
You mean read it?
I have the DVD. I want you to read the back of the DVD.
Let's see how accurate this is.
Okay, let's do this. If you thought the Beast was dead, think again. In this thrilling sequel to the original smash hit King Kong, scientists discover a way to bring the giant gorilla back to life, if only they could find a blood match. When doctors travel back to the primate's native Africa, they miraculously discover a female of Kong's size just in time. But after the successful transfer, the government learns of the pair and is determined to avoid the bloodshed from the first rampage. Now, one doctor committed to saving the two will battle the military in order to keep the magnificent gorillas alive.
Okay.
It's pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
They didn't even bother to try to give us some star potential. Usually in these roundups, they say, you know, the doctor played by Linda Hamilton from The Terminator. They usually do that sort of thing. This was just like, no one cares. Kong is the star. I mean, that's all we have.
Do you guys think that they even thought about trying to bring back Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange? Or was it just sort of like, they ain't coming back?
I mean, 10 years later, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely, if you love the 76 version, it's a pretty big omission because they had real connections to Kong. So you think they would be invested in the idea that somehow he survived falling off the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
He somehow survived that after being machine gunned by helicopters mercilessly. He somehow survived that. Yeah, you think they would really be invested in that, especially Jeff Bridges' character, who was, you know, primates was, you know, a specialty of his. So,
yeah, you think he would have been in there with Linda Hamilton the whole time,
right?
For sure, but
the budget was a little bit meager, so they by the 80s, both of those guys had blown up in a big way.
Jessica Lange would have had her Oscar by then.
Yeah, and she kind of infamously was like poo-pooing the movie a little bit. She kind of distanced herself as soon as she could from Kong.
Right.
She might be up for it now. They should do a belated sequel. do a Halloween 2018
She's like,
where they just
sure. I'm tired of doing American Horror Story, so let's do that. Yeah.
She'd come back and, you know, geriatric Kong, you know, comes back out. Yeah. How did you feel about this recap? You mentioned you had some thoughts.
I don't like it. So, okay, like, I am going to say some good things about this film because there's, I feel like there are positives to this thing, but it gets off to the wrong foot. So, opening with a recap of the previous film's ending, I think is a mistake because, like, the way that the 1976 film ends has so much power to it, and then this one comes along and it's basically like a compilation of the worst shots of what the 1976 film's ending is, and it just takes away all the power and all the emotion of that scene, and just kind of just puts it all out there. First of all, I kind of wonder, like, so did Jessica Lange and Jeff Bridges get paid for reusing that footage from
They wouldn't be in
1976?
there if they had to get paid.
Yeah.
It's no way.
So cheated them right out of that. So anyway, I don't like this this kind of like abrupt recap. I feel like the film's kind of off to a rough start, just in general, with trying to do a sequel to the classic story where Kong lives. It's like you're kind of undoing that powerful ending of the previous film. My general perception is that I get that, you know, you want to make more Kong movies. I get where Dino De Laurentiis would be coming from with that. But I feel like the relationship to another Kong film should probably have been the relationship between Kong Skull Island and the Peter Jackson Kong movie, which is that they're not sequels. You're using some similar technology to tell another Kong story. So, I mean, I think Dude in the Suit, let's tell a brand new story, would be kind of my perspective, because bringing Kong back to life, I feel like it undoes that ending from
the impact
1976.
of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's ironic because De Laurentiis in interviews and stuff said basically Kong is a star, and that was his first impulse, was that they were going to make sequels or belated just in reinterpretations, I guess, with the character of Kong. But I guess the screenwriters talked him out of it, and they thought with the artificial heart was like a new technology, and it was like really big in the early 80s. So I guess they thought that was just like a really solid hook.
That's true.
To, you know, have this gigantic artificial heart to, you know, transplant into Kong, that would just really, you know, galvanize people. I don't know.
Can we get into the science of this for just a moment?
Was there science?
Well, I mean, but he fell off the World Trade Center after being shot repeatedly. It's like this blood
Covered in blood. I mean, he's clearly very injured. Yeah.
Okay. So, like, there was a blood loss that's involved in all of this. But, I mean, just the fact that he needs a blood transfusion from another, like, Kong out there that goes into this heart, like, is that enough to get him to recover after this 10-year coma? Am I looking too deeply into this?
Yeah, they should have had a sequence of him going into physical therapy.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, on a little. They had a big bike for him to
Yeah.
kind of, you know, like get his heart back up. Yeah,
I
don't
feel
know.
like they needed him in a full body cast or something.
Maybe that was the first 5 years. This is 10 years
That's
later.
true. That's
maybe
true.
maybe they should have shown that, like, stock footage of like, these are all the steps we've gone through to get him back.
Yeah.
And just have like a little, you know, them sawing him out of the cast. You know, like.
Oh, with the oversized instruments?
Absolutely.
That's one of my favorite
Yeah,
things
that
about
was-
this movie. The way that they operate on him with, like, these huge scalpels and stuff.
Yeah.
The special effects are actually really cool in that
I
sequence.
think they are too. And that's one of the things that I'm going to give a compliment to this film about. I know that it really got drugged through the dirt, even when it came out, about the effects. I think the effects are really charming in this movie. It all works for me. I mean, people say, well, I can tell that's people in suits and everything. It's like, well, okay, but looking at films now, I can tell that's CGI.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like, I feel like, and that's not to say that, you know, I'm not knocking CGI. I feel like I want to appreciate the art form, whether it's the stop motion of the 1930s films, or whether it's the suit work that they did in 1976 and also this one, and then also the CGI work that they're doing now. Like, I view it all as a labor of love, but I especially like these people in the suits and the miniatures that they do in this film. One question about Lady Kong, though. Was the obvious thing not to call her Queen Kong?
You would think they would, but
Right?
yeah.
Maybe it was presumptuous because she wasn't married yet.
That's what it is.
This is her maiden name.
Yeah.
This is her maiden name. By the end, that would have been a great way to punch out. They could have said, you know, the queen has her child. Spoiler, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they might as well. They really swing for the fences with some of this dialogue. I mean, Linda Hamilton, the whole scene where they're like, "What's going to save Kong?" and she's like, a miracle. Like all like so sentimental, and like, you know, she's so invested in this stuff, you know. And they also say that she's been working with them for like 10 years. So she started when she was like 16 years old.
I mean, she had to be young.
She was like still in high school, like, you know.
That line did
fine.
jump out to me. It makes me wonder, was Linda Hamilton sitting there with the script and she comes across that, she just throws the script across the room, just like,
I thought it was odd to have her in it, especially after being in the Terminator, but I mean, I don't know how quickly, you know, when this was filmed, as far as when Terminator was released or anything. Maybe it was filmed a little bit earlier, because Terminator came out, what, 84? Yeah.
84,
and this was 86.
I think she would have, wasn't Children of the Corn the same year for Linda Hamilton?
Yeah, it was before this, right?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely before this.
I feel like this was kind of becoming her wheelhouse at this point. That being in things that are kind of horror or horror adjacent was kind of her arena.
Yeah.
And she probably thought, hey, look what it did for Jessica Lange.
Sure,
That's true.
Yeah,
Jessica Lange won an Oscar a few years later.
So she may have thought this would kind of, you know, take her to the next level.
Yeah,
Little did she know
that it would not.
It wouldn't quite work out that way. The whole reason this is on this podcast, The Holler Kings, about Southern horror. This baby was shot in the South.
Yeah.
Takes place in the South. It's in North Carolina and Tennessee. A lot of shooting around these areas. And I have some stories to double back on that concerns that sort of thing. Because I'm assuming I'm the only one of the three of us, because I'm the oldest, that I saw this in the theater. I may be one of 24 that saw this in the theater. I mean, because I legit, my uncle took me to see it. And,
now, was there anybody else in the theater when y'all went?
I remember it being well attended.
Yeah.
Because, again, it was shot in Tennessee partially, so I think there was a little bit of buzz locally about it. And I actually texted my uncle about it, because I was like, do you remember taking me to this movie? And he said, yes, it was horrible. It was horrible, but you loved it. You were really into it. And I said, you know, we're doing it for my podcast because it was shot in the South, in Tennessee. And he said, yeah, you knew that. You told me that. And I was like 6 years old. Wow. I was telling you that this was shot in Tennessee. I was such a little weirdo.
You really had your finger on the pulse,
apparently.
Man. Wow.
You bring up the attendance thing. I wanted to talk to you guys about this a little bit. The fact that this bombed as hard as it did is interesting to me, because to me this reminds me a little bit of the Return to Oz situation, which would have come out around the same general time as King Kong Lives, which I get that that's a film that really defied people's expectations, and perhaps King Kong Lives wasn't entirely the film that people wanted at that moment either, but I just feel like the name value of Oz or King Kong would be enough to carry it to a better box office total than what these films got. Just even if the crowd didn't love these movies, why didn't just the name value alone get it somewhere? It was a pretty abysmal box office take that King Kong Lives got.
No, one of the screenwriters, Stephen Pressfield, right? He has a story about how his only royalty check for it was 13 cents, and he like stapled it to the poster that was hanging in his office as just kind of a pseudo reminder. He's gone on to he wrote the novel The Legend of Bagger Vance. And that was like, he's like almost like a self-help guru. He writes about creativity. He wrote a book called The War of Art that is like the holy grail to all these creative people and everything. So he kind of made himself into this whole other industry. But yeah, I mean, it was considered a huge bomb, and that was supposed to be his big break. And he was talking about how excited he was, and it was just immediately kick to the teeth style.
Right.
Yeah.
But why do we think that happened, though? Because, you know, like I you know, there are things. It's not a perfect film or anything, but you know, it's still King Kong. There has been a lot of effort that's been put into the effects. To me, the budget is on the screen. Why?
Well, in the 70s, movie was pretty prevalent still, because it was played on television a lot. I mean, because I know I watched it on TV multiple times and had a VHS copy that I taped off television. So, I mean, it was definitely in the consciousness of the people of the mid-80s.
The only thing I could say possibly is just that these are, you know, older kind of IPs, and, you know, 80s was the juggernaut of the slasher of, like, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. So maybe it was just overshadowed by those and just people wanting something fresher. And they just looked at that as, you know, oh, that's like older movies type thing.
I guess teenagers might skew that way versus seeing a sequel to 70s King Kong. Yeah, maybe. It's weird too because we talked off mic. Universal Studios was having the big launch of Confrontation. Nailed it.
Late word just in. The path of destruction continues east, causing thousands to flee their homes. Police admit that they are powerless to stop the enraged beast. We now go to live coverage on the scene with our helicopter reporter, Kelly King. Kelly.
We're now hovering above the wreckage of a crushed L train. The helicopter beside us is searching for... Wait! There's a tram load of people down there. We've got to go down and warn them. Attention, people on the tram. You are in danger. Repeat, you are... What? No, we have to go down and help them. Behind us, where? I don't see them. No, where? Oh, my God! Ah!
Is that... Yeah. The theme ride, right, for King Kong debuted at Universal Studios that same year. So you would think that synergy would definitely be kind of like it's in the air or whatever. But
do we think people at the time would have been very aware, like in our state, that this is a homegrown property right here?
They would. In fairness, they would, because in the movie there's actually a life-size prop of Kong prone, like laying on his back, that they airlift at one point. They have helicopters. It's an actual 30-foot long prop, and helicopters bring it up into the air. Locals saw that and freaked out. It was kind of like a War of the Worlds type situation where people, saw that in the skyline. They're like, oh shit, like for it was a minute where it was like, what is going on? And then obviously, it was like local buzz. It was a big deal. I do think it's skewing different here in Middle Tennessee versus the rest of the country that probably thought it was a snooze fest.
I have an experience I want to tell you. I saw this movie in a movie theater. Me too. And I sat in the back row. Yep. And behind the back row was a door that swung like this. And it became the plaything for all the children in the theater. The little kids had never met each other before, all became friends and had fun swinging back and forth on the door because there was nothing on the screen that was even slightly entertaining to them. And so they could have sold tickets to the door. They could have saved all the expense of shipping that print to Chicago.
Inside, a swinging door. Come visit. Just like cool inside, refrigeration in the old days. I'm sure the candy counter did a big business.
Yeah, maybe it's going to be picked as the best film of the year by the popcorn growers of America.
So you were saying that a big chunk of this was shot up in the Pigeon Forge area, right? Which is interesting too, because if you go into Pigeon Forge now, they've got that big wax museum up there, and there's a giant Kong that's hanging off of it. I don't know how long that's been up there, but their Kong looks a bit like the Kong that's from the De Laurentiis films. I don't know how much we're acknowledging that. There was this one Kong movie that was shot here in town. Yeah, I have been to this wax museum. I can say that I can't remember any reference to this film in that museum. But you can go in there and get your picture taken in Kong's hand and everything. It's pretty cool.
And we also skipped over the protagonist of the male lead, right? Yep. Because I thought it was really funny how they insisted on comparing him to Indiana Jones.
And there are some half-hearted Indiana Jones moments here and there. The part where Linda Hamilton is walking across the bridge and it breaks and he has to rescue her. It's such a half-hearted sort of this looks like a Disney World stunt show kind of moment.
The screenwriters even go so far as to insert hey, not only is he like Indiana Jones, he's better. Because there's a moment where he's about ready to fall. He's in the wilderness, right? He's in the jungle, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta take a nap." And he walks over, and there's a snake, like a giant python-style snake, where he's gonna lay down. He picks it up and throws it aside like it's nothing. And that's obviously Indiana Jones.
He's like, "I don't hate snakes."
Right? It's like Indiana Jones' biggest fear, and this guy, nothing to him. He's not even scared of this giant ape, really. Right? He's better than Indiana Jones. See, and they have the characters essentially saying that over and over, and it's like, it's not working.
Yeah.
He's not
We're not buying it at all.
That scene you're referring to as well, that's the first glimpse that we get of Lady Kong. It's really interesting how, I don't know what the timing of this is, but I think it's within like the first 5 minutes of the movie that we've already got Lady Kong showing up, which is such a contrast to the 1976 film that really builds up to the point that we see Kong for the first time. I think that you could probably make the argument like, well, look, cat's out of the bag in terms of what our Kongs look like.
Right, yeah.
So maybe it makes sense to go ahead and throw in a Kong so early into things. But I did think that was interesting that so quickly in the film that we've already got her and we know what our second Kong looks like. The reveal has happened.
For sure. I mean, as a little kid, too, it was cool that it was so front-loaded. I mean, I know we were kind of railing against the recap from the beginning, but as a kid, it was kind of cool because, I mean, you just straight up see Kong in the very beginning. You're introduced to a new version of Kong straight up front. And like you said, I mean, there's so much anticipation, which is part of the fun of the 70s version and the 30s version, is the anticipation of the debut of Kong, right? Another sidetrack of that, though, is that the special effects for the 70s version was also pretty heightened because there was a lot of hype about it because they claimed that they had a robot, full-scale robot that was going to be featured in the movie.
That was kind of the notorious thing about the movie.
So I think that was kind of part of that, maybe, why they dragged it out a little bit. I think the robot only ended up being used in like a few frames of footage. It's really brief.
One of the interesting things too with Lady Kong is that I actually like the fact that she's got a thing for our Indiana Jones type character, the same way that Kong always had a thing for Jessica Lange's character. We've got that sort of like role reversal with this. Yeah. They don't do as much with it, of course, because ultimately we're going to have to get Kong and Lady Kong to together and everything. But I like that little nod was in there regardless.
She actually picks him up once too. He's like the classic blonde-haired male, that she carries away with. And it's kind of cool too that Linda Hamilton's character isn't a damsel in distress. She's like a scientist,
different character,
and a totally different type of female lead for a Kong series. So they were trying. They were putting something out there. Yeah. Also, another carryover, the director is the same director from the 76 version. He did like the Towering Inferno and stuff like that, so he has some like actual credentials too. I'm kind of surprised they could get him back for this.
Now, was the 76 version, was it really successful at the box office?
Sort of,
okay.
Yes. Dino talked it up a little too much because he Jaws was huge in 75, right? And he was like, oh, Kong is going to destroy Jaws. Like we have like the real mechanical monster, and Jaws is going to look like child's play compared to this. And then it didn't quite match up in any way, shape, or form to Jaws. And Jaws is obviously a cultural icon, and Kong is too, but not the 70s version so much. So I think there was a little bit of egg on his face for that. But it was profitable, and it did well.
I feel like it has its rightful place in 70s pop culture. There are a number of sitcoms that I can think of from the 70s where the characters are talking about, we're going to go see King Kong. Like, I know Good Times does it, where JJ's talking about, they've just come back from seeing it or they're about to head there. So you can tell that it had its place and that it was something that was being discussed. And I'm sure it was a big deal at the time because, like having a Kong film on that level. Because I've interpreted King Kong versus Godzilla was, I suppose that was more like a drive-in sort of situation back in the 60s. I don't know if that was being aimed as being as huge a box office hit as what this one was being positioned for, the 76 film.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Toho production, so I'm sure they thought as long as it did well there, which it did, by the way. It's adjusted for inflation, Godzilla versus King Kong is like the biggest kaiju movie or whatever. It was huge.
I could see that with those two, powerhouses going against each other. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it made a good amount of money for like what the budget probably was for it. So
absolutely. Why are they trying to save King Kong?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it be like a national trauma that he killed all these people in New York, and all these people saw this poor animal tortured and killed?
They took so much effort to mow him down in the 76. Why would they then try to keep him alive? That can't be cheap. So
they transported him to, I presume, Georgia is where this is supposed to take place.
Yes.
Because they call it the Atlanta, or in dialogue they call it Atlantic Institute, but the caption says Atlanta Institute. I assume it's in Georgia, but yeah, like they transport this thing, rehabilitate it, give it a $7 million heart transplant.
Why? Study him.
Right.
That's the best I got.
The locals, when they find out about the transplant being a success and Lady Kong showing up and everything, they're happy. The locals are like, yeah, like with signs and waving Confederate flags. A sighting of that is in there, really strange.
Yep.
And there's even like a person with a sign that says, me Fei, you Kong, or something like that, like a little nod. So these people are like really into Kong being there locally. They're not worried.
We're good. We don't have skyscrapers around here. We're fine.
It's so absurd that at one point there's only one security guard guarding Kong. After the transplant, there's one dude, and he's like a rent-a-cop security guard. Yeah. He's just like a regular dude. Like Kong starts to stir, and he's like, guys, and he's like totally alone, and you just think. Like, he would be under,
you almost expect him to just be like, no, I'm not dealing with this at all.
He just takes off,
You'd think they know better than to attempt the chains at this point, but they just keep putting chains on him and just hoping for the best.
Well, and it's amazing, again, how this is front-loaded because, Kong is revived and links up with Lady Kong, like 40 minutes into the movie. I don't think it was
even that long. It was really quick.
Yeah.
That kind of shocked me, especially watching the 76 version first and then going into this one, just like how quickly everything happens. It's just immediate. Here's Kong. He's kind of dead, but not really. He's in a coma. Oh, here's a Lady Kong that we just randomly found. Oh, let's do this operation, and here, they're together. It was really, felt like in the span of like 20 minutes tops.
And talking about overthinking, Kong also doesn't have a scar.
That's true.
He had major open heart surgery.
Yeah.
And it's like non-existent.
He healed right up.
Yeah. They should have had like stitches. That'd be kind of cool. Like
that would be
a nice little
cool.
touch.
Yeah.
Totally overlooked. Maybe he's... It's just part of his fantasy.
Like, we don't have the budget for that. We already finished it. It's fine.
They just paint it on, maybe. But yeah, and then we get the whole like parallel between the relationships of the humans and Kong and Lady Kong.
Something about that. The dynamic between Kong and Lady Kong, it's okay, but I feel like the interactions between Kong and Jessica Lange in the 76 film are so much better. Like, there is chemistry between the two of them in the way that I wasn't totally feeling it with Kong and Lady Kong.
Do you think it's a straight-up dialogue-driven? That,
I don't know quite what it is, but it's just like I felt like, I always think of, like, the part where Kong is, like, she gets all wet, and so, like... Kong like does this sort of like blow dry thing with Jessica Lange. It's a cute moment.
Yeah, that was adorable.
And this doesn't have anything that's quite on that level of kind of like clever and everything. It's just like, well, we're the only two Kongs, so we got to make this work. It's not quite that bad.
Forrest, there is a great courtship between the two that's paralleled with the humans.
Well, he tries to give her a snake.
Yeah, he did attempt that. But then he just gave up. He was like, okay, whatever.
But she sees that he's wounded. Mm-hmm. She starts tending to those wounds.
That's true.
Touching.
She gets the little like handful of water.
Right. And then, paralleled with our human leads doing the exact same thing in the exact same moment.
Yeah.
Very subtle.
Those two fell for each other really quick, by the way.
Right. Love-hate to just like, my sleeping bag is open for you. Yeah. Get in. But by the way, I remember very specifically the nip slip as a child.
Oh, did you?
Yes. In the theater, I was like one of those things where I couldn't believe that happened because you literally see Linda Hamilton split-second nude or whatever, or topless rather.
Right.
Well, I think that was probably coming from this sort of attempt to make this an edgier film. But that is one of those sort of like, who is this movie for sort of moments. Because I thought the rest of it was kind of geared more toward a family audience.
Well, seemed like it for the most part.
The tone is all over the place for this thing. And it doesn't know what it wants to be, because I feel like the script, if you read it as an adult, you would think that it's parody. It's almost like satire of because the scenarios that Kong finds himself in, at a certain point, he's like literally roaming the suburbs and looking in on people and stepping on cars, and it's kind of silly. I mean, there's a sequence with
people just suddenly everybody just randomly breaks out of their house. They see a huge grill outside and they're like, yes, let's go outside. And then just erratically take off everywhere and drive through his legs and on a motorcycle.
The motorcycle guy is great, though. It's beautiful. You even have a sequence of Caddyshack-esque of guys golfing.
I was about to bring up the golf scene. I kind of love that that's in there, because if I were to have Kong going through suburbia, I don't know if that's one of the things I would immediately come up with, is like somebody hits a golf ball into King Kong. But sure, I kind of enjoy it anyway.
I mean,
there's definitely some camp in this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Could they have taken the chaos that he could have brought to suburbia a little bit further? Like, that's not to say that, like, I get that we're playing it for laughs. That's cool and everything. But I don't know. Like, it reminds me of, when the T-Rex is, like, walking around suburbia in Jurassic Park 2. Yeah. Which seemed to take this, the concepts a little bit further. Was there more they could have done with this? Or was it a case of, we're doing what our budget can allow here, and we've run out of cash? King Kong getting hit by a golf ball is the best that we could do right now, guys.
I mean, that could be it, but I feel like they should have had more of that and less of the pseudoscience stuff and, like,
I agree.
The whole heart transplant. Just, like, say that's what happened. We don't need all that. Give us more, like, romping around the suburbs.
Someone behind the scenes was convinced that the heart transplant was, like, the key sequence to this movie.
Apparently,
because there's so much loving detail put into that versus the stuff the back end stuff that we're talking about that we actually really enjoyed. It seems like afterthought sometimes, but you might be correct that budgetary concerns may have been part of the limiting
They shot the heart transplant scene in the first week, and afterwards like, oh God, where'd our budget go?
They had these two giant hearts behind them. Like,
I'm not totally knocking that sequence, because like I said earlier, I love the giant scalpel and giant scissors and giant oversized everything.
It felt like a airplane or Naked Gun movie in those scenes. Just like how over the top it is.
You're right. Yeah.
But
and this like cartoonishly big, oversized, like they wouldn't come up with other technologies to help them do this, like automated
laser or something
just
like
everything,
that.
but way bigger. Like it's been through Honey, I Shrunk. I guess this would be Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. Like everything gets way bigger. And, you've got Linda Hamilton using this giant scalpel, and she's getting like little splurts of blood all over her as she goes. It's great. How much of this movie are we spoiling? Let me ask you that.
Why don't we? Is there anything else before we get into spoilers that we want to discuss? Or because I think we can.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah,
Let's let the cat out of the bag. This thing came out in 1986. If you don't know how this goes yet,
but it's hard to find.
It's true.
Well, I mean, this might be someone's discovery of this wonderful film.
We'll pause it, and it's on YouTube, I guess.
And honestly, it's almost the only legit way you can find it now. So
literally,
check it out on YouTube.
Track down a DVD, but you're not going to find it streaming anywhere else.
But it should be noted that Kong is being chased by the military. I think that's something we haven't quite massaged in.
That's true.
Is that we have a crazy colonel that is just hell-bent on destroying Kong. He just will not let it go. He's very concerned. When they confront Kong, he does like a fugitive jump to get away from them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He jumps off of a giant cliff into the water, and nothing is to scale appropriately, because I kind of feel like he could just step down most cliffs. You know what I mean? It wouldn't really be that big of a jump. But anyway, they see Kong jump into this water, and they're like, well, he didn't survive that. Yeah. He's gone. Kong is dead. No worries.
Wipe our hands of that. We're good.
Cut to 9 months later. Lady Kong is captured. They've doped her up in captivity, and Kong is on the lam, unseen for 9 months.
For 9 months, no one's seen this
He's
guy.
just in the wilderness. This 40 to 50 foot tall animal.
Is that the Smoky Mountains in those scenes?
I can only assume it is. I don't know 100%. I think the cliff scenes are Tennessee, and most of the interiors are North Carolina.
Okay.
So I think most of the exterior stuff is going to skew towards Tennessee. Yeah.
Well, nobody would see him up there in one of the most touristy areas
Right,
of the
yeah.
country.
I mean, they're definitely relying on no one's outside knowledge of the area to cover their tracks a little bit.
This is like the jungle out there. Yeah.
Although they did establish that there's a lot of crazy hunters, so you think someone would have encountered them or looked for the body or something, but I guess not. So, how is Kong reintroduced? What is the speculation? Does anyone remember? Lady Kong is in captivity. She starts to kind of act up a little bit. She can smell him.
Oh yeah, from like, I guess miles away.
Which they established earlier in the movie, right? But like Linda Hamilton's character is like, he's still alive. She can feel it. I can feel it.
Right. Yeah.
Somehow she's still, and she has an electronic device that helps her recharge his.
Is that what she was doing?
Calibrates
it was some interesting technology she was running around with that laptop looking thing where she could like see his how his heart rate was going on and everything. Pretty impressive tech for 1986.
Absolutely.
I have to say.
Early on, after he exerts himself, she's like, he's stronger than ever after that activity. And I'm like, how does that work? He just had heart surgery. Shouldn't it be the other way around? She's like, oh my God, he's on the cusp of death, but instead, I guess his physiology is just so much different.
So she's basically running around with like a life alert sort of situation. Yeah. In case he's has like a I've fallen and I can't get up.
Right. Which I don't
crank it. Cut away to the big game hunter guy has bought a preserve with he was money loving in the beginning, but now he is just he loves nature and he wants to save the Kongs. And he buys a land preserve for them very thoughtfully with his money. So we know there's an end game. There's a chance to save Kong and Lady Kong. And that's how it ends. It all ends up very nice land preserve.
Sure.
Well, other things happen before we get to that happy ending, though. Should we spoil some things now?
Yeah. I was being tongue in cheek because
it does not.
Up until the modern era, like the past 5 years, no Kong movie ended on a happy note. It's part of the theme of the story is that you have to see Kong suffer and die at the hands of humans. It's just part of the thing.
And it starts with a scene that could have been so much fun where Kong shows up to a barn dance.
Yes.
That's you, Elroy? I ain't seen you in 100 years, boy. You don't never know who's going to show up at one of these family reunions, do you? Ain't that a natural fact? How about a little something to wet your whistle, huh? Just wrap your gums around that, boy.
So we gotta love this thing for being set in the South, because how many giant monsters have shown up to a barn dance? So
a first.
Okay, so like if you don't want spoilers, turn away because I got some things to say about this. What is the point of going to all this effort of reviving Kong, which I would have assumed to be moved to continue a franchise, only to kill him all over again?
And they call it King Kong Lives, too.
Yeah.
I mean, false advertising, right?
Lives, ... for now.
Question mark. I mean, wow, yeah. It's...
And in a scene that's actually quite a bit less powerful than what the 1976 film does. But anyway, so the way that this is going is like we got Lady Kong who's in a barn or whatever.
Oh, Forrest, hold on. There's something I gotta cut you off.
Yeah.
We forgot the redneck sequence.
Oh, yeah.
That's really important. That's really important to this. Kong is captured by marauding rednecks, kind of hearkening back to Jaws, right? The populace becomes aware Kong is still alive, and there is just a race of hunters wanting to kill Kong. One is quoted as saying something along the lines of, "I want Kong's head on the front of my truck."
My truck, yeah.
What the hell is this? Deliverance?
You there! Are those weapons loaded?
You bet, General. So are we. We'll be shooting each other, you damn fool. You want to get killed? I want that head on the hood of my pickup.
He has no clue how big this damn guy is, I guess, because they really don't know what they're in store for. I guess he just thinks he's like 10 feet tall or something, right? But they managed to capture Kong. I mean, these hunters, they're very
resourceful, that's for sure.
They dynamite him and have rocks avalanche on him, and they literally like bury Kong in the sand style, where just his head is sticking out, right? And they mercilessly torture him as rednecks do.
Mm-hmm. Because they're from the South, so that's what we do here.
There's such gross stereotypes.
Oh, it was over the top, for sure.
But I guess maybe they felt like they had to really layer that in, that these are bad people because of what happens.
It does play into the plot of everything. Like the fact that, you know, Kong's going to like wipe out a few of these guys. Like, it's important to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Hamilton even says, she's like, oh no, Kong, he's actually killed, or something like that.
She does. Spoon feeding it to us.
There was also a great sequence where she speculates on how much food he would have to eat. She was like, the amount of protein Kong would need is off the charts. Yeah. And then it cuts to him like eating an alligator, and like, and it's like so badly done.
Hundreds of little alligators.
Right. Like he has like clearly a baby alligator for scale, right? Mm-hmm. And they cut to like an insert shot of like a full-grown alligator like snarling, like you know, and then they cut back to like a prop, and you just like, you know, snaps it in half or whatever,
like it's a crab leg or something.
So yeah, he's subsisted on alligators this whole time, and the rednecks capture him. And what happens? Tell us, Adam.
He
taking pictures
manages
with them?
To, I guess, get some of that heart strength up and just burst forth from the rocks.
Yeah.
As they start torturing him, and then he mercilessly kills them.
Yes, it's very graphic, and I want to say it's the first time that he literally eats someone. Like I in the original 33 version, he puts
he chews on somebody.
He chews on people and kills them, but this one he is straight up eating people. Mm-hmm. He splits one in half, and the second one he literally eats. And there's like the gag where he picks his teeth, and there's a hat.
Yeah, he picks the hat out. Yeah,
he has a discerning palate. Do you continue though with the Christ-like moments?
We're going back into the barn. So like Lady Kong is with child, and Kong has been taken down by the military. This is his final moments, and Lady Kong is giving birth there in the barn. And can I just say really quick, why is the son of Kong so small?
This was a huge thing, because even as a kid I remember being really confused.
It's so odd because like you see because Lady Kong like places I guess like the son of Kong on her chest for King Kong to see his son like in his dying breaths and everything, and like you got like that comparison of her hand compared to the son of Kong, and it's like the son of Kong is even smaller than the people that get carried around in these films.
Yeah,
it's like a normal sized gorilla or something.
Yeah, it's human sized for sure, and like it makes you wonder about the life cycle of the Kong species. Is it almost like a kangaroo situation? Is it like born almost like embryonic style, and then it like gestates outside the womb or something? Here's the reality though. I figured it out. I've had a long time to think about this. They had the prop hand, and they wanted to use it. So like he's just small because they wanted to use that prop hand and like, you know what I mean, have her pick him up and hand it over.
Guys, you have no idea how much this hand costs.
I mean, that's the only reason I can think of. I mean,
but my question is like, okay, but like with these two monstrous-sized parents and everything, why is that not hereditary? Or does he just like have puberty like no one would believe?
Right, that's a good idea.
And all of a sudden, like, goes from normal-sized gorilla, but then like when it hits those awkward years of adolescence, all of a sudden shoots up to 50 feet.
That's a good idea. I bet that's what it is. I mean, I think in story, that's how they would explain it. Because, we cut to them living in the wilderness later, and he's still tiny. Like, they don't bother to, like, upsize him at all. You think they would have thought of all this stuff and maybe had, like, a little person play him, or just a shorter actor, just to kind of have, you know, and what do you call it, do the shooting where some people are closer than others.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Perspective, right? Yeah. Something like that. Lord of the Rings style
and
almost.
things like that.
They're doing that for Kong and Lady Kong through the rest of the film. It feels like such an odd thing. And this is one of those elements of the movie that, because this does have a budget to it, and because like so many people are working on it, you would think somebody would have like stepped up and said, you know, maybe we need to make this the size that people are expecting from the Son of Kong. Which is my other thought with this, is like, what I was saying earlier was that why would you bring King Kong back from the dead just to kill him again? But maybe this was the trajectory that they wanted to take the franchise, is that the next film, had they made it, would have been Son of Kong, and then we're following that character's journey.
Just tease it at the end, like Queen Kong and Son Kong will be back in the sequel or something along those lines.
I mean, it would have been a pretty easy story to break too, because I'm sure people would have wanted to go to that preserve to mess with that. You know what I mean? Like, you
could have had an interesting movie out of that for sure.
Could have had a Walter Peck type character, like Ghostbusters style. That's like these animals shouldn't even exist. You know, like we need to euthanize them. I mean, you could have all kinds of angles.
Could almost do like a Jurassic Park before Jurassic Park.
Yeah. We glossed over too that Kong gets to go up against the army in this. It's one of the first times you really see Kong just unleashed and like really do some carnage and some damage, like Toho style. I mean, like Godzilla style. It's really cool.
More like Godzilla territory. And this was another one of the areas I thought that a lot of these sequences worked. The way that they cut this together, I thought was handled pretty well, actually. I liked those sequences.
Well, I mean, when he's like smashing, you know, tanks, and they do a great job because apparently they had the cooperation of like the North Carolina National Guard, so they used real military grade vehicles and troops and everything. So I mean, the cutaways to what he's going up against, I mean, it looks great. I mean,
it did. Yeah, it was impressive. It was kind of funny though, because like any car or tank or anything that even slightly turned over just burst into flames.
Yes.
That was great.
It's classic 80s logic. Yeah.
It reminds me of like a Family Guy episode where like a horse and the cars and everything are exploding. But yeah, I was just anything he touched, it exploded in a ball of fire.
And kind of playing around with the original, he steps on Charles Grodin. It's a pretty famous scene. This one, he does it to the Colonel. Except he pounds him. He smashes him with his fist. It's a great moment.
Yeah.
And the Colonel's legs are dangling out, Wicked Witch style, right? They're just kind of propped up out of the ground. I thought it was a great moment. And again, was something they did on purpose. Like, I don't feel like that was supposed to be taken seriously, where you're like, oh my god, that poor man. You know, I think you were really supposed to get a kick out of that. So
yeah, of course, because he was pretty much a huge dick through the whole movie. So it's
they play him up to get killed for sure. I mean,
so we think like this film was playing it for camp more so than the 1976 film was.
It seems like they leaned into it a lot, because there's definitely camp in the 76 version, but I think that's just kind of due to the times and the technology of the effects and everything. But this one seemed like it deliberately leaned into it pretty hard.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I also think that Rick Baker being on board the original or the 70s version, he had a real love for that character, and you know, it's like his baby.
Yeah.
Without him being involved, I could see where it kind of go off the rails, where they're like, it's just a monkey movie. Let's just have fun with this thing.
He added some gravitas to it that wouldn't be there otherwise.
And also, because it's a sequel, that I feel like they have to up the ante sometimes, because the blood
Oh, they definitely upped the ante, that's for
I
sure.
mean, like, and that's pretty tough to do because the 70s one's pretty gratuitous as well when he's getting machine gunned by the helicopters. But in this one, I mean, it's like full-on squibs, you know, just bursting from Kong when the military is attacking him, and he has this covered almost head to toe. I mean, it's off the charts.
Yeah,
how badly he's
that kind of shocked me with that because, I mean, of course, with the 33, there wasn't anything like that really, and I don't remember Peter Jackson's King Kong being graphic like that
it's
or
not
anything.
as bloody, I guess. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the 70s and 80s for you.
For
It's
sure.
like, oh, we're going to mow them down and we're going to show it to you.
But after all that slapstick, the tonal shift is crazy.
Yep.
When the baby is born, like the sentimental music starts to kind of filter in, and somehow Linda Hamilton can now speak to them because she's just all like, Kong, Kong, it's your baby. Lady Kong, show him your baby. Like, you know, it's like very, and they seem to understand her.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, we need this conduit to have
That's
this
it.
interaction.
We understand your language.
So who do we think that they were primarily targeting with the film, though? Like,
I don't
is
think
it a teenage
they
boys
knew.
thing? Okay.
I mean, from like, you know, saying from the tone, I don't think they even knew.
Just all over the
I think they were just trying to hit every demographic they could. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely some interest in that era in doing some giant monster movies that didn't totally get off the ground. But I'm sure you've heard about like the film that Steve Miner was wanting to direct, the Godzilla film. They were going to do an American Godzilla film in the mid-80s.
And Steve Miner was going to direct it?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
That was if you even remember in Friday the 13th 3, there's a scene
Just watched
where,
it yesterday.
Yeah. So like you know the girl who's in the hammock and she's looking at a Fangoria magazine that has an article about Godzilla. That's because he thought that was going to be one of his next projects.
Wow, really?
And it was something that was being talked about a lot in the mid 80s, and then you know that didn't come to fruition. But then you know like they reshot some scenes so they could release Godzilla 1985 in the mid 80s. So there were seemingly some attempts to do this in that period of time that didn't quite click for the reasons that you guys laid out earlier, which was it was the era of the slasher and everything.
Right.
But there were some attempts to do this, I think.
Now, was that before this King Kong Lives? I mean, could it maybe have been squashed just because of how badly Lives did at the box office, I'd say, maybe?
I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't have the full story in terms of, like, why that project didn't end up happening or why we wouldn't get an American Godzilla until years and years later with a film that nobody loves.
Yeah.
I mean, and this movie definitely effectively killed Kong for, I mean, a couple of decades almost. Yeah. It's pretty crazy to think about.
I guess until, what, Peter Jackson's, or was there anything in between there?
I mean,
not even like anything
not
Toho
theatrical
or anything?
No, not that I know of.
But I also wonder what the level of exposure this film had. Because, like, how aware of this movie were people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, going back to the War of Art from the screenwriter of this movie, I mean, he expected it to be a huge hit. I mean, granted, he's inside baseball style, like inside of it, so it's probably different for him.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean...
what was it, like, advertisement heavy? Was there a lot of TV spots and things like that?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Again, locally, I remember it being a big deal. But again,
I'm sure they had, like, news stories around here and all that type of things,
I figure a lot of it just comes down to the marketing of the thing. You would think that it would have at least had a really solid opening weekend rather than this thing that nobody seems to remember happening. And something that's really hard to locate today, which is another thing that's unusual to me just because it's King Kong. You would think that people would, a reevaluation of the film might be in order. Because my feeling is like there's two ways to view this film. If you're looking at it as a sequel to the 1976 film, you know, it's definitely not perfect, but I definitely look at it in a more favorable way if I'm seeing it from the perspective of this is a film that was so unloved at the time that it came out, and it's so undervalued. In that sense, knowing the reputation it has, I feel a lot more positively to it. Now, had I gone into it, if I'd been old enough to like have seen it as an adult, like being familiar with the 1976 film, I don't know that I would have loved it. But I feel like it deserves better than what it's gotten over the years.
Basically, I mean, Obscurity, it seems like, is what it's gotten. Basically, yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely, as someone who just watched this for the first time just a week ago, I mean, I think it definitely needs to be on more people's radar and in that pantheon of King Kong movies. Despite its missteps, I think, like we were saying, I think they lean more into the camp than it being unintentional. And I thought they had an entertaining story overall, especially as something coming from the 80s.
They're definitely playing with the format a lot. Like the classic formula of Kong, they're definitely like, okay, let's see him in the suburbs. Let's see him, you know what I mean? Like, let's see him in like the wilderness versus like what we're used to, which is...
Which does make it more ambitious in a lot of ways than what Son of Kong would have been, which was a film that was after the 1930s film. Son of Kong felt very happy to retread a lot of the same territory.
Right.
And I feel like that one really only advances in the story in the sense that, if I'm remembering this correctly, Skull Island just sinks at the end of Son of Kong. But outside of that, we're not taking the story to an especially new place. But on the flip side of that, Son of Kong does not make the fatal mistake of undoing the ending to the previous film. King Kong is still dead. At the beginning of Son of Kong, they return to Skull Island. They find the Son of Kong there, which would imply that there would have been a Queen Kong around there somewhere too.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Carl Denham is just like nicknaming him Kong, though. I mean, he's probably not even related. It's probably just some,
that could be. Yeah, that's probably right about that.
I don't know
then,
if
like, are there several
albino.
Kongs out there then?
What's that?
So are there several Kongs on this island?
I would think it'd be like a whole species,
Wow.
right? On Monster or Skull Island, rather. I almost said Monster Island.
Well, I mean, but when you go back to it, they seem to just focus on the one Kong. So are they all Kong, or is he kind of down to like being basically the last one of this species?
That's what they do with Skull Island.
Yeah.
The most recent version of Kong, that recent iteration, they claim he's the last of a species, basically. Yeah. So that's a good speculation that maybe back then that was also supposed to be the case a little bit. Yeah.
So there just so happened to be another one out there, or is there just something in the water?
Right.
Oh, it spawns them. Yes.
It's like, he's the last one. Wait, this movie made money? Never mind. There's a son of We forgot about him. He was there on the island, too, the whole time. It's fine.
We're not even accounting for Mighty Joe Young. He's just out there in Africa.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
He's not on a special island or anything. He just kind of shows up.
I get that was an odd part, too, with the female being not from Skull Island.
Yeah. Now, in the screenplay, they do speculate on that because...
Oh, really?
They talk about how the land masses may have been adjoined at some point, and then continental drift took Skull Island away from Bonnaroo? How do you pronounce that?
I could.
Tell me, Adam. You know all about Africa. Tell me now.
Such an expert.
It's like Bonnaroo or Bonnaroo. Yeah, it's like where those chimps are from. That are
Borneo.
Borneo.
Boom,
Thank you.
That's
what I was looking for.
I had to pull back to my Little Rascals knowledge because I remember they mentioned that, like, I don't know, that was a big thing back in like the 30s and 40s.
Really?
But I felt like it. Maybe I just watched Little Rascals too much. I remember it getting mentioned on there several times. But
every time on Holler Kings, we kind of analyze quickly how authentically Southern the movie is.
Well, I mean, it's definitely through the lens of
someone
Hollywood.
not from the South.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, look, like, I've lived in Tennessee my entire life. I have not attended a barn dance.
Yeah,
so
they're not as prevalent as Hollywood thinks.
but I mean, like, I know that they exist somewhere out there. So,
or have we been fooled by Hollywood? Because I've never heard of one ever.
And the dialogue there is beautiful because it's just like guys sharing moonshine. It's like, put your gums around this one. It's just so bad. Hee-haw, territory.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't see much authentic, but
there are some nice shots of the Smoky Mountains.
That's absolutely, yeah.
I do know that they called for extras, so a lot of the extras are locals, because I remember desperately wanting to go and be an extra in a King Kong movie as a young kid.
You think they told the extras? Well, I guess the extras wouldn't really probably be talking or anything. I was going to say, do you think they told them to really southern it up a bit? You know,
well, I do wonder if they handed them Confederate flags to wave, because that's in there.
I feel like they had
or
to.
Or did they show up with them and they were like, well, we can't tell the locals not to.
Yeah,
you know, because it's a weird. It's an odd thing to see in a King Kong movie.
But then again, I could see locals showing up with those too. But you know,
and the Yankee, the out of southern, out of towners are like, yeah, put them up front.
Yeah,
put those guys up front.
Come on. Yeah.
Though I will say too that if I had heard of a King Kong movie that was being shot with a barn dance scene, I feel like I would have gladly shown up and played a washboard for it.
Oh
or
yeah, for sure.
I would have done whatever they wanted.
We all would
absolutely, yeah,
shucking and jiving for them.
Just a straw hat and overalls with no shirt under it.
King Kong, I love you. And we're just overalls.
No shoes.
Oh, I want to play the moonshine jug with the little X's on it.
3 X's on it. Yeah.
Well, and finally, after we just analyze the authentic nature of this film, do you guys recommend it? Would you recommend someone watch this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
There's like I said, there's a lot to enjoy about this film, and you know, it's like I said earlier, I like the suits and the miniatures and all of that. There's a lot that's charming about it. I think you have to go into it knowing that it's not as good a film as the 1976 one, or of course, like the classic from the 30s, or even or Peter Jackson's film, but it is a King Kong film that has gone unloved for all these decades, and I think that it deserves another look.
What is your favorite Kong movie? I meant to ask that.
I mean, it has to be the original.
The original?
It's too hard to beat, but you know, I don't know that there is one that I don't like though. I think I inherently like all of the Kong movies.
You're a big kaiju guy, right?
Yeah,
because I am too.
Godzilla would be more my thing, but you know, there are Godzilla films that I like better than others. There are a handful of. I shouldn't even say a handful. Just the one from 1998 that I'm not a huge fan of. But the Kong series, I think, is pretty solid stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've taken less shots than Godzilla, obviously, so it's a little easier to skew with higher standards or whatever, but yeah.
Tougher to please you every time, I guess. Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Adam?
My favorite Kong?
No, well, would you recommend this one? And then, what's your favorite Kong?
I would, but it'd have to be to a certain audience. You know, in the age of stuff like Skull Island and Godzilla versus Kong, I think it'd be difficult to, you know, recommend this to just anyone, or general audience anyways. But I agree that it is one that is overlooked and I think needs to be kind of brought back up into the zeitgeist of pop culture. And definitely it's one of those that you can be like, hey, you know, you got some friends over, you want to have a good time, let's sit and watch this movie because it's fun, it's entertaining, you laugh at the cheesiness, the campiness of it. So yeah, I definitely would, but it would have to be the right audience for it.
Yeah, I think it would be a good like party movie.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what well, what's your favorite Kong?
I'd have to go classic.
Really?
With classic King Kong, the 30s one. Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Because I mean, that was this, like I had said earlier, King Kong versus Godzilla was the first one, but the one after that was the 30s King Kong. So yeah, it was definitely one I was always impressed with, and then, you know, it's a classic. You can't really beat it.
It's a classic, and the stop motion animation in it, I think, is still beautiful.
Right.
And there's just so much to love about that film that, you know, nothing can ever top it, really. But yeah, it has to be that.
Right. It has to be one of the most influential movies because you still hear young filmmakers saying, you know, I caught this movie on TV, or my grandparent showed it to me, or whatever, and it's still influencing people in a way that most movies from that era are just forgotten by modern audiences. So there's something to it.
Yeah,
there's
other than King Kong, other than the Universal monsters, there's King Kong, and that's about it as far as like what's still popular. And, you know,
Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. I think those are the last 30s movies that the public is still
Right.
aware of.
Yeah.
I'm like you, Forrest. I like every Kong movie. I mean, there's not one I don't enjoy. I love Skull Island though, and I think one of the reasons is because they don't go into sadness porn territory.
Okay.
They let Kong have a happy ending, and I, for me, that was like such a breath of fresh air after seeing Kong mercilessly
Every single
killed
one.
and to include his son who drowns at the end of Son of Kong. Spoiler. It's just kind of like,
damn it, I was about to watch that one.
I mean, it's just kind of like, let the guy have a happy ending, and that's also why I loved Godzilla vs. Kong. I mean, I love seeing Kong as the hero, and
that was really great.
It was really fun for me.
So let me ask you this. Is this the only of the Kong films that's truly difficult to locate? Because I watched Son of Kong not too terribly long ago. I know I was able to locate that without any difficulty. I guess the one that would have the question mark around it would probably be King Kong Escapes. My thought is like, if people want to do like a marathon of Kong movies and binge all these things, is this going to be the only one that they have a hard time getting hold of?
100%, because the
especially if you want a physical copy.
Yeah, physical copy for sure, because Toho still has King Kong Escapes is pretty readily available to the point that they even have like the Waxworks Records. They do a lot of boutique, excuse me, pressings and everything. They have one for King Kong Escapes that's coming out soon, so it's kind of up there with. I think the mechanical Kong helps, the kind of iconography of that movie bring it up a level. But yeah, I own all of them, and this was the hardest one to find. For the listeners, I have a physical copy of King Kong Lives, and I got it several years ago off of eBay. And it was still sealed. Whoever held on to it never opened it, so it was brand new.
Did it cost you a pretty penny?
It wasn't that expensive. I think I paid like $20 for it, and I've never seen it. I go to a lot of conventions and stuff, and always look at the booths with DVDs and Blu-rays. They have all kinds of crazy out of print things, and this one's never with it. So it's a hard one to track down.
Does there exist a fandom for this movie anywhere? Because I feel like I never hear people talk about it.
Not that I've experienced.
It's funny because doing just a little review for this, there's a lot of people that still blog about it and do like James Rolfe that does the Angry Video Game nerd character. He did a review of this film. So, I mean, people still know of it and review it, but I don't know how they're getting their hands on a copy to look at it. Maybe just nefarious ways. I don't know.
Well, with Angry Video Game Nerd, I'm sure he has no problem.
Resources. Yeah.
It just seems like anything with this sort of content, and then also making it rare on top of it, that it would build more of a cult following than what it seems to have right now.
Well, it's really weird because, again, doing the review, I was looking, or review before we recorded, I was reading old reviews from the time, from the era, and Roger Ebert gave it 1 star and said that it was boring. And I'm just like I watched this a couple times, sadly, before we got together, and I mean, I think it's anything but boring because there's so much weirdness in this movie that even if you acknowledge that it's bad, right, in the intellectual way that a movie is bad, I mean, there's just so much going on that's just swinging for the fences and just so strange and not in anything you've ever seen before, that calling it boring
seems like
really
the oddest thing
me.
you could. I feel like that's the only thing you couldn't call this movie.
Yep.
And I guess that's how adults took it at the time, was just, it was a snooze fest. But I mean, were they not, like my uncle that took me, he's a doctor. And I just wonder if, like, during some of those sequences with the artificial heart and everything, like, he was just like, this is not real. Like, I don't know.
Well, I know you said that he said it was bad, but did he say it was boring?
No.
I mean, that seems, I could totally see if someone's like, that movie was terrible, but not boring.
But
would you recommend it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I recommend this unabashedly. I mean,
he's like, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna watch a King Kong movie, I mean, like, I don't feel like it's that weird to suggest this would be one to check out at some point. I mean, if you're not into giant monster movies, then yeah, maybe you can skip this one. But if you like Kong, I feel like as a completist, you have to see this. I mean, it's extremely unique for a Kong movie and a kaiju movie. I'm not sure that we've ever seen surgery in any kaiju movies. even thinking of like Mechagodzilla, who is like built upon the bones of an original Godzilla. Like, I don't think we ever see like organs transplanted, or Pacific Rim, I think, gets into that just a little bit, but I mean, we don't see like an actual operation on a kaiju, you know, it's
with a camera
gnarly.
shot from inside the creature, no less,
as
looking
blood
up.
sprays up.
Yeah, we are literally inside of Kong's chest, heart cavity area, looking up at people, which is quite something.
It was cool. It was cool. Also, on the ride, did you guys ever do the ride?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember his breath smelled like bananas?
I don't.
Really?
That's a really cool detail.
Yeah. When you get the closest you can to Kong, you know, the big animatronic or whatever, and he's holding on to the trolley that you're on, you can feel his breath that hits you, and it smells like bananas. I remember it very vividly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's when they used to really know how to do stuff. It was pretty fancy.
What a great detail.
All right, Forrest, well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Me, guys.
And all your insight.
But yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us, Forrest. Really appreciate it.
Got it, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Before we punch out, we're recording this on Saturday the 14th of May. And yesterday it was announced that Mr. Fred Ward passed away.
Yeah.
That's at the age of 79. Mm-hmm. We talked about Mr. Ward. On our episode about Southern Comfort, which was pretty recent.
Right.
And you specifically kind of dived into to his character in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always, like I had said in that episode, just being like a huge fan of the Tremors movies, I've always had a love for Fred Ward. You know, because Tremors 1 and 2 were ones that I probably go, well, maybe, not say probably those two mainly are the ones I go back to the most. Mm. And I just really always loved that character. And in other things he's done too, you know. He's been in a bunch of stuff, but Tremors was what really kind of first put him on my radar. Yeah. So, yeah.
He was a really cool, rare guy that kind of did leading roles and character actor work.
Yeah.
He kind of straddled both those universes and had a very big hallmark of the 80s with Remo Williams, right? Because it was like The Legend Begins or something like that, right? Yeah. Notoriously never had a sequel. But, you know, it's fun stuff, a great actor, and I'm glad we got to talk about him on the podcast in one of our featured films.
Have you ever seen, he had a movie that was like a big HBO movie in like I want to say the early 90s called Cast a Deadly Spell. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's one of those that, I still haven't watched it either, but I know it's one that came on my radar a couple years ago, and it seems to get a lot of love and everything.
What's it called again?
Cast a Deadly Spell.
Is it kind of horror adjacent type stuff?
Yeah, I believe so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. There was another movie with him called Miami Blues. Have you ever seen that movie?
I've seen like bits and pieces when I was young and kind of younger, but
I think it's late 80s, maybe early 90s.
Yeah.
He plays kind of a down and out detective. Like so far as he even has like dentures. He has like false teeth that he takes out at one point. And everything. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see him play a character that's a little more fragile. And apparently he bought the rights to the novel or whatever. Like he developed that movie himself as like a vehicle for himself.
Huh.
And, it's a really cool movie. So,
and of course he was in 30 Minutes or Less. Did you ever watch that movie?
No.
It was, who's in it? Jesse Eisenberg.
Okay.
And
so it's pretty recent then.
Yeah,
like past 10 years
and
or
Aziz Ansari. Mm-hmm. Where he gets like strapped with a bomb strapped to his chest and he has to like try to rob a bank and all that, with Danny McBride and Nick Swartzen in it. But yeah, he was in that as I forget who he plays in it, but yeah, he that was one I remember him in from a few years back.
Nice.
Probably the last thing I saw him in, I would think.
I think he played a part in True Detective the first season.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And that's the last I remember him popping up in anything. So I don't know if he kind of, enjoyed some retirement years or what was going on.
He probably was like, I mean, because he was, when he just recently passed away, he was 79. Yeah. So he was probably like, man, I've done some stuff. I'm happy with my career. I'm gonna relax in these twilight years, I guess.
I hope that's how he got to play it out.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we just wanted to acknowledge it because we really enjoyed him in Southern Comfort.
Especially with mentioning him in Southern Comfort and everything. Just want to acknowledge it. I mean, it sucks, but, you know.
Rest in power.
Absolutely, sir.
Yes. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you again to Mr. Forrest Sanders for taking part in Kong Lives.
Thank you, sir.
And once again, you guys can find us at the Holler Kings on all social networking. Well, Instagram and Twitter. And you can email us at thehollerkings@gmail.com.
Right. And then, of course, we have the YouTube channel.
Yes. Just
the Holler Kings. Just the Holler Kings.
Yeah. Look us up.
Watch our video essays, I guess. Is that what you would call them?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of video essay podcasts.
Right. It's definitely something that's fun to watch, but if you just listen to podcasts on YouTube, then there's that too. You don't have to watch it, but it's a cool little add-on to it. That's fun to do.
If you're listening to this right now on YouTube, give us a like and a comment.
Like it. Subscribe.
How did you feel about Kong Lives? You have any memories?
Yeah. You're on YouTube. Go ahead and watch it if you haven't seen it. It's there.
And finally, thank you to Hi-Fi for our wonderful music.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Man, it doesn't get old to me. I love it so much. It's such a good track.
Well, and Hi-Fi, Mr. Eric Newell, he's getting back into it because he's published some new music. So he had a new track drop yesterday on Friday the 13th. So be sure to check him out on Bandcamp and on social media. That's Hi-Fi, HY-FY. Adam?
Craig?
Thank you for joining me for the Holler Kings.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Y'all come back, you hear?
Damn it. You're supposed to say holler at your boys.
Oh, shit. Holler at your boys.
Y'all come back now, you hear?